everyone. Today, I wanted to talk about failure metrics. Uh, Recently, I was in conversation with some aspirational product managers, and we were talking about metrics. And everyone talks about success metrics, right? So we had a discussion on that, and then I brought up the subject of failure metrics. And as we discussed this topic more and more, I got a very interesting feedback that this is something we had not thought of before. We hadn't looked at it from this perspective. And there were some folks who are involved in working with the enterprise, and they had some thoughts around failure metrics in an enterprise scenario. The interesting thing for me was that this reaction was not new, and it has it's a very common reaction I get to this topic. That this is not something people talk about quite often, and it's a very interesting way of looking at the evolution of a product. So I thought that let me do a video on uh, failure metrics. And like I have been doing in these videos, I will rely on a blog post on my website as the collateral, and I will share the link in the description. So let me go ahead and share my screen. So the measure of success, zone of struggle, and a measure of failure. I want to spend some time on first defining what we mean by measure of success, typically, right? In most cases, it's around the customer, their adoption, their engagement, how much revenue they are bringing into the business. You will hear things like our customer retention score is 90%. That's a very good measure of success. Our net promoter score is 80%. Our churn rate has never crossed, let's say, 10%. A bunch of these, right? Our customer lifetime value is $300 and growing. Sounds good for many businesses. And they're very well thought of, they're very well crafted. There's a lot of focus from business on coming up with the right success metric, and product leadership, product owners, product managers spend a lot of time worrying about achieving this metric. There is this thought experiment I run often with folks. I say, hey, let's say in your product, you have chosen that one of the ways to measure success is that 50% of trial users will become paying customers. Sounds fair? That sounds like a fair metric, conversion rate of 50% in, let's say, a couple of quarters, maybe in one quarter, right? So the question I have is, at the end of the quarter, if instead of 50%, you have achieved 49% conversion rate, what does that mean? Definitely, it's not a failure. What this means is that, yeah, we're a little behind, but all looks okay. Okay, how about if you saw 45% conversion rate? Does that mean you have failed? No, not really. Maybe we are a little behind on certain things. Let's go and look deeper at why we didn't make it till 50, or what kind of things we can do better or do something different to achieve at 50. But no, we have not failed. We just need to do certain things better. What if it's at 40%? What if it at 30%? Will you worry at that time something is wrong? Yes, probably. Lot of folks will spend time in trying to dig out, why it's so low. But would you call product a failure? maybe no. At 20%, would you call it a failure? Maybe if the conversion rate is 10%, would you call it failure? And in all of these conversations, as I keep on reducing the face value, at some point someone says, no, 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 that's far too low. That is the breaking point. Below this, it's not acceptable. Something is wrong at that time. And that in that conversation has helped discover the failure metric. Now, what does it mean? Why is it so important, right? It's the difference between what I referred to earlier as zone of struggle versus, you know, failure. Now, if you have not achieved your success, that doesn't mean that you have failed or you should give up, pack your bags and go. That means you need to do, it depends how close you are, you need to do certain things more effectively, more efficiently. Maybe you need to go back and do some additional research, look at product data that has been collected, see where the inefficiencies lies, what is going wrong, do that, right? But at some point, you have to ensure that you're not getting stuck in the sunk cost uh, thought process, right? It's not a, oh my god, we have spent so much on time on building this, we have spent so much of money into building this, we have sought approvals from so many top execs that we cannot just fail, so let's keep on trying, let's keep on trying. People call this sunk cost fallacy. Some people say that it's throwing good money at a bad idea. At what time do you know that the idea is bad? You had an hypothesis. You tried experimenting around it. It's not working out. Time to move on. Either you do a very hard pivot or you give up, right? But that point has to be known so that you are not taking emotional decisions when things are not going right, and you're taking well thought of decisions based on some margins and metrics that you had started that you had marked at the beginning. And that's why the measurement of failure is very important, because not achieving success does not imply failure, right? What failure is that you have consistently not achieved that minimum bar based on which uh, that bar which you had decided that I need to hit this minimum bar in order to build a sustainable business or build a useful product. And if I'm not hitting that minimum bar, there's something wrong. I need to go back to basics. I need to pivot, or I just need, maybe the idea is ahead of the time. Maybe the market is not ready. Maybe my idea of solution to solve that problem is not right. We need to give up, right? And then that's where having a metric that tells you that that is where you are is very important. And if you look at it, measure of failure as such, right? It's not a very it's not a very complicated thing. Once you get over that emotional fear of imagining what happens in case everything goes wrong, what's the worst case. Once you overcome the fear of that, and you are willing to look at that scenario, imagine that scenario, put in metrics around it, uh, what you have essentially done is you have, with defining the measure of failure, made it very clear to yourself and everyone else in the team that if we don't hit success, we have to work hard. But there is a point where the metrics will tell us that some of our basics was wrong. Means the metrics stop telling us that we need to work hard, but which success metric and the zone of struggle is all about. But the metrics are telling us there's something fundamentally wrong in our approach. Either we need to pivot hard, or we need to just close it and revisit it with some different point of view probably even a different time with a different team. So, like some characteristics, it's always a band. There is this between zero to something. Zero is not necessarily always, the measure of failure, but it's always a band between some point. Maybe you need to understand that band very clearly. Typically has a component of time, because in order to take the hard decision of pivots or even closing down, you need to ensure that the 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 failure metrics are staying around, and in spite of uh, all your research and all the fixes you're putting in, um, maybe many pivots that you're doing, if things are not getting better, that means you're not in a goal zone of struggle where you need to improve, do things better, um, uh, do some deeper studies into failures. Maybe there are some bottlenecks, um, those kind of things, right? But basically what it's telling you is that consistently you're not achieving it. So, for example, here I'm saying that conversion rate is less than 5% over 3 months. That gives you a very clear idea that you're in the zone of failure, and you need to take measure, take actions accordingly. Um, there has to be a sufficient, gap. The zone of struggle really has to be wider. That gives you a lot of leeway, or it gives you a lot of time to try out different things, try new methodologies to overcome this zone of struggle and move into measure of success, right? The example that I used earlier, so if you look at it, measure of success is conversion rate is greater than 50%. That means keep going, keep learning, keep improving, all the usual stuff. If you are in the zone of struggle, typically things you should be doing is look at the product again, do a deeper analysis, revisit your user research. Why aren't users responding the way you had anticipated because of the research? Was there something wrong in the research? Has something changed fundamentally in user behavior? Market research, has some dynamics changed in the market which are affecting you? How is your ecosystem and competition evolving? So if you're in this zone of struggle, you need to go back and look at a lot of research that you have done and try to understand where things are wrong. But if you're consistently, in this case, conversion rate is less than 5% over 3 months, record out the learnings, so that it can help you in some future scenarios, someone else in your organization who is trying to attempt to solve the same problem. Always record learnings and then either wind up or pivot. Would like to hear your experience on this failure metrics. I know all of you must have success metrics, and all of you must be experience this zone of struggle where you haven't reached it and you're trying to do things little better, different in order to achieve the metric. But I want to know that if you ever had metric for failure, what those failure metrics were in your case, and what was your reaction to them. One thing I want to call out, which is probably I should add into the blog later, is um, failure metrics in an enterprise environment, right? Now, in an enterprise environment, it is a lot of execs are a little reluctant to address or talk about failure heads on. There is this apprehension that talking about failure metric is going to seem like a CYA, cover your ass kind of activity, or it might give an impression that you have not planned properly, you have not studied properly, you have not researched properly, and someone will come and ask that You must have done the user research. You must have talked to the customers. You must have done the market research. Uh, you would know that there's no chance for this to fail. This is the right thing we are doing. And then why you're talking about failure? Now, those are involved in startups, early age products, or fast-paced consumer products. Know that there is a little bit of statistical errors or uh, I don't know, luck factor, if to put it that way. Maybe there's a timing issue. There are reasons why a well thought of, well designed product can fail. And the 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 shifting of conversation from, hey, what if we fail, to how do we know that we are not heading towards failure? What are the failure metrics we should have? This shifting of conversation can really help you hold these conversations, address this topic without getting into the threads that I mentioned earlier. It will actually do the flip side. It will highlight that you are planning properly, you are thinking ahead, you are building a solid case study, because while you're defining the success, that this is my success criteria, you're also saying that as soon as we start seeing these numbers go beyond this threshold, we should quickly come together as a team, as a group, look back at the basics, the changing dynamics of the market and user behavior, and take corrective actions fast. So, lot many times this is also called failing fast, right? So let's have a clarity on what are those trigger points, what are those mix when we feel on that. That's a trigger event that we need to get together and make a decision that um, have to fail, let's fail now. If there is a learning, let's grab learning. And if there is an opportunity to pivot based on what we're learning, let's make that pivot. So it kind of takes the conversation away from the topic that a product manager be apprehensive to address, like why you think of failure. I'm sure you've done your research. So to how do we know that something is not catching us by surprise, and we are hitting and we are in the direction towards success. And the failure metric is that point where we need to go and see, look at all the bigs. So it inverts the conversation from um, optimism to hard facts, which will help you in your journey and overall make you a good manager. So if you're in an enterprise, share your experience with me on fast, on conversation of possibility of failure, and you have used things like failure mech to the conversation from why we fail to, okay, these are the trigger points where we know something is going on, so we can either fail fast, pivot hard. Hope this was interesting, and would love to hear experience, and see you in the next conversation. Bye bye.